Well, good afternoon. It is a sunny, a little bit warm afternoon, summer afternoon, and I am coming to you from our tree area here at Handy Andy's, and I'm glad that you could join me for this week's edition of What's Up Wednesday. Lots of fun things, of course, to share with you. I always have some fun plants to share and some plant topics to share with everybody as I do these weekly videos, and I'm glad that those of you who tune in live can do so, and those of you who tune in and watch after the fact can get some information a little later on anyway, somehow that is useful in your gardening methods. So if there are ever any questions, I'll stumble over my words there, if there are ever any questions, please put them in the comments. I do try and post the events a couple of days ahead of time to give people a chance and a reminder that I intend to go live as I usually do here on Wednesdays. And I just want to give that opportunity to anybody who would want to ever ask any questions. Please feel free to do so. That's the purpose of this opportunity anyway, is for me to be available to some of you folks for your questions and your thoughts and anything that you're looking to have answered. So always leave a question in the comments. Don't ever be shy. Send us a message, I guess, if you feel like you are shy or you feel like your question is dumb. But there are no dumb questions. If you don't know the answer, there's likely to be somebody else that doesn't know either, and they could benefit from that same question. So always feel free to ask questions. A little bit on that as we kind of get rolling. Do have a number of things I want to share with you though this evening. One of those, of course, as we continue to stare the hot weather in the face, is of course water concerns and water needs. Now is probably the time that is the most difficult for plants, other than maybe some spring frosts and some things that we did deal with earlier in the season. But dry, hot, drought of a summer is very, very hard on a lot of plants. I'm going to show you some things again that maybe have helped to you. I'm going to take and show you a few leaves and show you some stuff that is evidence of drought damage and what we can do about that. And the best thing we can kind of try to do as far as maintenance is to make sure that we are watering. That is evidence number one of something that's struggled, is did it receive enough water? If it's receiving consistent moisture, it still is subject to some of this damage. I guarantee you that we are doing everything we can here down at the nursery to see that things are able to survive during these hot months, and still we are met with some minor failure or some minor plant leaf damage that will occur, and I'm going to show you one particular item on that pretty soon. But the evidence is there of drought damage, but if we're watering, our damage should be minor. It should still be not enough that the plant is going to suffer any long-term loss or long-term damage if we're watering efficiently. And that is at least 3 times a week. Every other day or every day is better. How much water? I usually look at, if it's a brand new planting, I look at the container size that I would have purchased the plant in, and that's usually on our receipts. If you get our receipt, it'll tell you the container size of the plant that you bought. And I look at that and I go half of that container. So most of our shrub varieties are in container number 2s. That's roughly a 2-gallon container is the industry trade for that. And that then I would say should benefit from about 1 gallon of water when you water, and that should be every couple of days anyway. I'm glad to hear that your 5-gallon bucket method is working. That's probably again about right for that Tannenbaum pine. Tannenbaum pine is a number about a number 5 container when you bought it earlier this year. So they're a beautiful plant, by the way, and I will have some more Tannenbaum coming in later this month, hopefully from my vendor out of Canada. But watering about half the volume of the container that you purchased it in is a good bet. Most perennial plants are in a 1-gallon container, so half a gallon is roughly a good guess on that one. Trees, at least 5 gallons, as Stephanie has said in her 5-gallon method per watering is a good idea. Just make sure that you're getting enough there to get the soil just well moistened when you water, and then also make sure that is not occurring too far apart. That's really what makes things difficult, is when the water starts to dry up in the soil. When that occurs, soil has a lot of nutrition to it. Most of it does, and we can enrich it and always improve our soil with some compost and some things like that. But when the soil dries up, what happens is those nutrients are no longer available to the plant. And that's really what one of the issues for drought issues are for plants, is that they don't have the minerals and the nutrients that they need when the soil tends to dry out. The other one is number one, which is water. If they don't have the water, plants are predominantly water, much as we are. We have a large percentage of our bodily makeup is water, right? And so if the plant does not have what it needs, then it doesn't do well. So enough of me talking, and let's actually look at some things, okay? I'm going to show you a shrub here. This is one of my featured shrubs for the week too that I'm going to show you. But here you see on the edge of some of these leaves, you see some curling. And this is damage from drought, simply put. And again, I don't want to sound as though I'm being accusatory. Every once in a while when folks come in and they'll say, what's wrong? What happened? And I will bring up the water. Well, I know I watered, they will say. They will just be insistent that, well, I know I was watering. And I have no doubts that you were probably doing your best. But all this is evidence of is that the plant simply was not able to drink enough water to sustain itself during these hot days. And so what it has done is it has sacrificed about half of or a portion of the leaf here to damage. That is simply that the plant was not able to drink enough water, and that's all. So what should we do about that? Well, that's not going to recover. I'm just kind of rubbing that off. I might take a scissors later on and cut that leaf, or I could just decide I was going to take that whole leaf if it was bad enough. So I'd just go back here on the stem with my fingernail, and I just took the leaf off, just right at the stem. Sure. And so that's a little bit of leaf curl or leaf scorch that's occurred on this viburnum. I am going to show you, put the camera around for a second. I am going to show you an aspen that had some damage from drought as well. And I do want to show you something that's really fascinating on this aspen. And that is, you see again here where this entire leaf turned brown. And this entire leaf turned brown again from drought. We took a couple days where we weren't down here all the time over the 4th of July, and because of that we suffered a little bit, much like I'm sure some of you did if you took a vacation. Maybe you were struggling in some aspect of that too. That again will not recover. It has started to, the plant has started to let go of this leaf anyway. You can see that. The leaf color is different. It's not a green on that stem anymore. It is going to probably lose that. It'll abscess and it'll just fall off, is what will happen on that leaf. But what you see on this other branch is right where those leaves have attached on this branch, that you see some brand new dormant buds developing on this aspen. And so it's producing new leaves, and it is going to be just fine. It's putting some new growth on to recompense for what's been damaged, and it will be just fine. Plants really are a lot tougher than we give them credit for. They really often are. They can come back from some pretty severe damage and still be just fine. So that's a little bit on the water. I did want to cover a little bit on some soil amendment again. As I mentioned in a couple of videos prior, back in June, I have some soil amendments here at the store, and I wanted to feature those here again just briefly. So I'm going to flip the camera around again, and here in front of me what you see is sphagnum peat moss. And you can buy sphagnum peat moss at the box store. I have it here too in different size bales. But sphagnum peat is really a great soil amendment. It is fairly acidic. I think it has a pH of about 5.8 if it's just 100% peat. It's pretty acidic, and we tend to be pretty basic here. Neutral, if you remember your pH scale, is about 7.0, and we here in the Williston area and kind of the Missouri bottoms here tend to be upwards of 7.5 to 7.8. Some bad circumstances you can break 8.0, you can even get up close to 9. Then you're going to probably have a hard time growing many things. Many things may be difficult for you, but if you're still in that 7s, 7 to 7.8 or so, below 8, you should not have any trouble growing most anything really that we sell here at the store. But sphagnum peat is a nice soil amendment, and I do like to see people think about adding that to their soil when they plant. Not a large percentage, maybe a little bale like this. This is the 1 cubic foot bale that I'm messing with here. And that bale's about the size of a backpack, maybe a good sized school bag or something like that. Not real big, but maybe that for I don't know, a 10 gallon or a 15 gallon tree. If you were looking at doing a bigger tree, something that broke the 10 or 12 foot range in a number 25 container, you might want more peat than that. But most of the time, the 1 cubic foot bale is going to do it for you. If you're per tree, if you're going to do something larger than that, then again, you may want to look at more. The other amendment I wanted to show you was this Dakota Peat, and when I used this in my plantings at my own yard last year, I was very happy this spring with the fertility that Dakota Peat offers. In fact, I like to see these two used almost together a little bit. But Dakota Peat, compared to sphagnum peat, is very different. You can see that not only is the color different, but the makeup, the composition is different as well, because peat moss, the sphagnum peat, is from sphagnum peat bogs, and it is produced in several places. A lot of times in Canada, there's some big sphagnum peat bogs. There's also some over in North Carolina and that area on the eastern United States. But this Dakota peat is a sedge peat, and it is manufactured in near East Grand Forks. And the difference between sedge peat and sphagnum peat is, you can see this is really fine, very, very fine. It's been well ground too, for one, but it doesn't have it's not flaky. This is kind of a little bit flaky. This sphagnum peat moss is, but the Dakota peat is a sedge peat. And the difference primarily there is the sedge is dug out of, say, the bottom of lakes and streams. Okay? And sedge is when you think of cattails and sedge grasses and things like that, that's where this Dakota peat is coming from. And it is not acidic, so it isn't going to help you acidify the soil or anything like that, but it is extremely fertile. So I do like to see Dakota peat used in areas that may be high in sand, where there's some fertility issues potentially. That usually is some benefit to use some Dakota peat in that sort of a circumstance. You can use them both, and I would recommend using them both. So that's a little bit on some soil amendment. The other thing that I will mention with our water needs and our water challenges, as we've been kind of talking about, is that a layer of mulch over the surface of soil will help you to stop evaporation in these hot days. So do pay attention to that. I do sell mulch here. It's better mulch than you're going to find at the box store. Unfortunately, though, it's more expensive. That's the trade-off. But it is a good product. It's a cedar mulch. It's 100% cedar, and it is a Montana manufactured product, and it is a shredded product. And what I like about that shredded cedar mulch that I carry is that it will mat. It will stay flush with the ground, it will mat, and it will stay put. Some of the chipped colored stuff you buy at the box store, as soon as you start to water or the wind shows up, it can just pick that mulch up and just blow it away. It'll just take it right away. And then unfortunately we've lost that covering that we wanted that mulch to do, and that covering of the soil surface will help to stop the evaporation of all that water effort that we've put into these plants at this hot time of the year. So that's a little bit on care and a little bit on some things that we, should you put mulch under your tannenbaums? You may. Yep. If you have open, bare soil, you should probably consider mulching of some sort. That can be grass clippings, as long as you haven't put any weed killers or anything down in your grass clippings. You mow your lawn, you've got your grass clippings, you bagged it. You may sure use something as simple as that. How thick? About an inch. About an inch thick or so of mulch is going to stop evaporation. For the winter months, I like to see you even consider going thicker than that, but right now to stop the heat and stop evaporation, 1 inch is good enough. So that is great questions, good follow-up questions on what I shared about mulch and water. Do want to move on now. Please do feel like you can ask questions if you want to, but I'm going to move on and show you some perennial plants here at the store that I'm going to do some cleaning on, and I'm going to let you kind of observe that with me as we look at that. So we'll get to the perennial pruning and perennial care part of the video here now. So I've got several items here I'm going to go over with you. The first one I'm going to go over is this Daylily. And Daylily are a wonderful perennial plant. They generally bloom in the midsummer, so late June through about the 4th of July. And this big brown stick that you see is what's left over of the flower spike on this plant. Wood flower way up here where my hand is now, and it's done flowering. Flowers are all gone, and that stem is all that's left. And that stem basically is now in the way at this point. It's not making the plant look very tidy. It's not making it look very good. And so I'm just going to simply go back kind of as far as I can. See, I'm way back down. I'm not going to cut any leaves though. It's coming up from between the leaves. I'm not going to cut any leaves. I'm just going to cut the spike off. And I did damage a leaf. That happens. So I just cut the spike off. You can see how it's hollow right there. And I did nick this other little leaf here, and that's okay. That happens. But there are some other leaves on this plant that have been damaged from wind damage or just mechanical damage of being moved or bumped or something. And you see some things that are damaged there. You see some leaves that are turning brown. The brown leaves can be removed, and they're going to be removed kind of here. You see this one bent over where my pruner is. I'm just going to take it right there. Okay. And this one also bent over. Just going to take it kind of right where it bent. Okay. Just to kind of clean it up, make it look a little bit more habitable, a little tidier, put it that way. I don't want to take too many leaves away because this plant is still trying to grow. And a little bit on plants and leaf to root relation is, if we remember our days of learning about plants in our school days, right? We learned that plants make their own food, and we learned about photosynthesis. And that was something that we probably forgot all about now since, and we just don't even remember anything more than just the word, probably. But what they do in that process is they take water, they take the minerals that they bring in from the soil, and they use the chloroplast in their leaf to use light as their energy to manufacture and build sugar. They build carbohydrate. And when they do that, then they have to take some of that carbohydrate and they have to move it down into the roots and feed the root system, because the root system does not make its own food. All the root system does is drink water. It does not have any of those photosynthetic capabilities that the leaves do. And so in order to have a healthy root system, we need to have leaves. And that's been what's been most difficult for some of these trees and shrubs and things, is that when they leafed out, they were only able to leaf out partially. And that has been very detrimental for them because they cannot produce enough leaf canopy and enough sugar in their leaves to feed the root system that's left down below. And so that's the concern. People say, well, if it only has about 10 leaves on this tree, is it going to come back next year? Maybe, but I wouldn't expect with real good vigor, because again, it doesn't have, it's like fasting. And how long can you fast? I'll ask them. Well, not super long. I could probably go a little while, but I can't go a year per se until that plant would have a chance to put leaves on again. So we don't want to, when we're pruning, that was a little bit of an aside, but we don't want to remove any more leaf material than we have to during the growing season. We want to let that plant shed those leaves on its own. I showed you that in that aspen a little bit earlier in the video, where I showed you that the leaf had dried up, had burned, and that it actually was saying, I'm going to let go of you now. It was dropping that leaf, dropping the stem right off of that, the petiole right off of that leaf. So we're going to go back to this Daylily. And we see some other brown leaves. I'm going to take kind of some of those off. And you can use a pruner like I'm using. You can use a scissors. You can use whatever. There's more pruning that can be done to this plant, but I am going to move on because I want to show you a few plants so that you get a little bit more of the general idea. Okay, this is a yarrow, and yarrow is a beautiful perennial plant, but it is, as I would say, a friendly plant. It will naturalize, it will spread. It does produce these beautiful flowers, and those flowers, unfortunately, will move their seed by air. And so if we don't want these plants to go all over our yard, then what we can do is we can clean them up. So as this plant is starting to be done with this flower. It's no longer yellow. It's in fact all brown at this point. I am going to go all the way back. I'm going to follow this stem all the way back here. And there are some leaves on this stem, but I am going to take it pretty low like that. And so I took about that much off. It's a little more than 9 inches or so. What can I do with this? Well, it's really garbage. It can be composted, can be gotten rid of. Some people, though, might be doing some fall arranging or doing some things later on with maybe some fall dried material, and this could be saved for a dry arrangement that you might do when you go foraging in your yard later on. So if you wanted to hang on to it, you sure could. But that's a little bit on how to prune yarrow. Here's another one. This one's not quite done, but I'm going to follow this one down to about here. Just get rid of that too, just to help clean it up a little bit, make it look a little happier. Sometimes the heat, again, when we deal with leaf scorch and we deal with leaf damage from either storms or what have you, it can make our garden look just really rough. And going through and doing some cleaning like this can help to say, well, I guess it really isn't that bad. There is some growth under there. You see, this is an astilbe, and there are some leaves that were damaged earlier this spring. And I'm going to go ahead, now that I have a bunch of new leaves, I'm going to go through and I'm going to cut off these dead flower spikes. That's what those are. It's a flower spike of the astilbe. And I'm just going to go kind of down. I'm just going to find right there on the stem. Cut that off. Same thing. Right down into the foliage there so that I really don't have to look at any sticks or anything. And you can see that that plant is looking better already. And I really haven't done anything other than just kind of help clean it up a little bit. So there, lots of new growth here coming underneath, lots of growth that can replace and produce food for the plant. Even though those other older leaves were damaged, it's been able to produce some new growth that will make it very healthy and happy still. So that one I'm going to call pretty much done. Again, there's more that I probably could do to it, but I'm not going to do any more at this point. I also am going to show you this one here. This is a Penstemon, Husker Red Goat's Beard. And in bright light, it does usually have a little more of a red tone to the leaf. But it's got a flower spike on it too that it puts on in the early summer. Probably am not going to get it to focus very well. You can kind of see it there. But here again, also, I'm going to go down and I'm going to kind of just remove those flower spikes. And I'm going to try and do it a little bit evenly so that it looks a little bit uniform. So that looks better. Just went ahead and kind of cleaned it up, tidied it up a little bit. Penstemon is kind of a large plant, tall plant. I did leave quite a few leaves here because I don't see a lot of new growth yet. There is some down there, and hopefully that cutting back will encourage these plants to continue to produce leaves and continue to feed their root system and get a little bit of growth here. We are headed into soon, of course, what will be the best time of the year to do any outdoor planting. We're headed into fall pretty soon. I know some of you don't want to hear that because some of you are going back to school, but that's the simple fact of the matter is that we're headed into the month of August here very shortly. We get through the first couple of weeks of August, and that gets us to the 15th. To the 15th of August, the 15th of September is the best time to do any outdoor planting. It's when things are going to really look the best that they've hardly ever looked the whole year. The late part of August and the first part of September. So we're going to move on and have a look at another one. I have this Royal Candles I want to show you. Then we're going to look at a Gallardia, and then I'm going to share some plant features with you too. But here is a Royal Candle Speedwell, and you say, my goodness, this thing looks awful. Looks just terrible. Well, it did get probably a little bit dry, okay, but it is also done flowering, and this is sometimes the way things look after they get done flowering. So I'm again just going to use my pruner. I'm going to go back down here where I see that there's some leaves that are attaching to the stem, and I'm just going to go back and take that off of there. Take that off of there. Take that off of there. And here it's not dry all the way down to the bottom. There are some leaves down there, but I'm going to go about halfway back. There again, I didn't go all the way back. I just went back far enough that I saw that all the tissue above that I was going to cut off was dead. And you'll notice what I am doing a little bit, I'm not being real careful here, but if you look closely at this astilbe, you will see that there are some secondary flowers that are coming underneath this. And I more or less am just kind of doing kind of a whack on it. But you can be as careful as you want to, because if you're very, very frugal and particular about what you're cutting off, you can be sure that you're not cutting off some of these opportunities for it to bloom again. And that's really what I should be doing, but I'm just trying to get you the general idea of what it is that needs to be done to help this plant. And there's more that I could do, obviously, but it looks immeasurably better than it did when I started. Just immeasurably better. So, last one I'm going to do is this Gallardia. Blanket flower. I love blanket flower. Not super long lived. They may only hardly live a season or two, but they do go to seed fairly well. And that's all of these flowers here have more or less gone to seed. They've dropped their petals. They're turning brown. And if I left them on the plant, the seed would ripen on the plant, and I could possibly keep and scatter those at the base of this plant and encourage more Gallardia to just sprout naturally here at the base of this plant. But I'm going to go ahead and clean them up because I want to keep the plant looking tidy. So anywhere again that's broken, I see some broken stem there, some broken stem, dried up stem there that I'm going to get rid of. But again, I do see, if you look close here, I see some new buds forming. So I want to pay attention that I'm not going back too far and cutting off my buds, if that is something I want to keep. And if I want my garden to look showy and pretty, it probably is something that I want to keep. I'm just going back to kind of the leaf on the stem there. There's a leaf that meets the stem on Gallardia, and I'm just kind of going back to about there. And if you want to be sure you're not cutting off blooms, find the flower on Gallardia, follow that stem back to the first leaf that you find on that stem, and if you cut there at that first leaf, it's not likely you're going to take any flowers away. You have to go back further on Gallardia to find the lateral branching that actually has the next set of flowers on it. So if you just go down to the first leaf that you find on that stem, you're not likely to remove any flowers or any secondary flowers. There, no, still didn't. So that's a little bit on the cleaning up of perennials after this heat. Some of the damage that we've seen. Just shows you a little bit on how I can make that plant just look a little bit better, right? It's still got some growing to do. It's still got to recover from that heat, but it doesn't look quite as bad as it did. There, I cut that off of there, and you see right off of that is coming another bloom. Okay? So that was what I wanted to spend the bulk of my time with you, was sharing that with you here this evening. So you had some information on how to be successful as far as cleaning up perennials and things like that. Now I want to get to my plant showcase for the week and show you some tree options, some shrub options, and some perennial options for our region that I have that are looking just great right now. And I got one other thing to share with you, and we'll be done with the video. So let's start with the trees. I do have some things continuing to arrive this time of year. I know some of you might find that hard to believe, that I'm still ordering product, but with the availability of things as they've been this year, it's just been very difficult to restock things in the summer. Like it usually is not that hard in the normal season, but this year it's been very difficult. There's been a lot of demand for plant products, and the wholesale nurseries, unfortunately, are quite behind. And so I've had to pre-book a lot of items for later in the summer. And so there are some things that I do have in stock again, one of which I want to show you is a tree option that's just one of my favorites. That is this common hackberry. And the hackberry is back in stock in a 10-gallon size. It's probably 8 feet anyway. Here you see a picture on the tag. Hackberry are Celtis genus. They're all by themselves. They are cousin to the elm, but they are all by themselves in their own genus. And they have a beautiful leathery leaf. Very tough plant. They have a corky, kind of a unique, corky, gnarly bark to them. There used to be quite a few of these in the old parts of Williston, but shortly here, not too much time, they've had to start to be cut down because really they've reached the end of their lifespan. Many of them have probably been there 100 years or more, possibly, and they're starting to get tired, and many of them have had to be removed. So we're starting to lose our hackberry presence in some areas of town, and we're gaining it back in some other areas of Williston where new plantings have been done. If you drive under the overpass on 18th Street, you will see on both sides of you as you go by the track there, by Come and Go, by the bank, the credit union, you will see in that planting area, you will see some hackberry planted there. So they are kind of filling them back in and adding them back into the landscape in some places, and of course we're losing them in others. But I love hackberry. It's a tremendously drought tolerant tree. It is a great shade tree. It'll get 50 feet or more in height. It'll get 30, 40 feet, maybe 50 feet across. And it's a great tree for a region that may need to be on its own a little bit later on, meaning that you're not going to water it or you have no intentions of providing water for it. Hackberry are an awesome tree for the region. Really no disease issues to it at all. The plant name hackberry means that it does produce a small little brown berry in the spring. It does have a flower, and the berry is about the size of your little fingernail. Not much bigger than that, and the birds usually take care of it. You don't even actually know it's there. The next one I want to show you is another one of my favorites, one that's really growing on me, and that is this plant here. You think, well, what am I looking at? You are looking at a variety of oak, but you'll notice it's not a rounded leaf like some of you know, a violin-shaped leaf or something of that nature as an oak. It's not the rounded edged leaf like the bur oak that you might be familiar with. This is kind of got a pointed edge to it. This is the pin oak, Quercus ellipsoides. This is a northern pin oak. And what I love about this plant, as you notice on the tag, is it has a beautiful kind of red fall color. May not be quite as rich a color as some of the maple that we desire to plant, but if you've been following me in any of the videos I've done before and you've been paying attention to the landscape, you'll notice that the autumn blaze, the Sienna Glen, have had a tremendous amount of difficulty this year with our climate, most of which I tend to blame on the frost, but some of it could be drought related as well, but I blame a lot of it on spring frost. And so I bring this Majestic Skies oak to your attention because it does still have a red fall color, and it will tolerate spring frost much, much better than the maple varieties will. Oak are a late to wake up kind of a tree. They usually are one of the last trees to get up from the winter sleep, and so they are less susceptible to spring frost than some other tree options. They also do have roots that tend to go down, so they make a great yard tree, probably better than the Sienna Glen and the Autumn Blaze, because the Sienna Glen and Autumn Blaze have a parentage of that silver maple. And the silver maple, when it does get older, after about 40 years or so of its life in a space, those roots do begin to come up, and they'll come up into your lawn, and you'll be going over them with a lawnmower. You'll be tripping on them or bumping on them when you're trying to maintain or be in your yard, and you'll say, gosh, that's sad. Why is that tree doing that? Well, that's a maple for you. But you won't have that with your oak. You wouldn't have that with this beautiful Majestic Skies oak. And I do have some of these on the lot again in a 10-gallon size. They're a nice size. Again, oak get pretty good size. They get about that same size as that Sienna Glen and Autumn Blaze. Roughly 60 feet tall, roughly 40 or 45 feet across. Cold hardy is all get out, zone 3. So great for those of you who might be in northern North Dakota, Crosby area, up in that area, possibly Plentywood or Scobie or some of those places that are closer to Canada. This tree still is going to do very, very well for you there. The next one I'm going to show you is the Harvest Gold Linden. And you might be familiar with Linden. I've talked about them before in previous videos. I just love Harvest Gold though. They are a new cultivar. They're a Mongolian linden. And they have a little more serration to the bottom of the leaf on them. Straw yellow, kind of a brilliant yellow fall color on linden. Very, very tough tree. They also are late to wake up. They don't wake up very early, which means that they're not subject to spring frost. I'll PM you that information, Stephanie. The oak are not subject to spring frost in the way that some things are. Neither are these linden. And linden are beautiful trees. They tend to flower in the month of June, late June, close to the 4th of July. And they have a beautiful kind of a yellow flower. It does have some fragrance to it. But the Mongolian linden is hardy zone 2. Super, super cold hardy. What these linden are not tolerant of, unfortunately, I'll do that too, Stephanie, is they're not super tolerant of drought. So linden are not a tree that I would plant in an area like I mentioned, the hackberry, where eventually I'm not going to water this tree, or the tree's going to have to go looking for its own water, and it might be up on a hill where it would be dry and just a difficult place or a difficult site. No linden there. Linden belong in a area that is under a well-cultivated lawn or something like that, well manicured or watered lawn. They belong someplace where they're going to receive ample water. If they aren't going to receive ample water, don't plant a linden. Pick a different tree. You'll just be happier with a different tree choice in that instance. So I am going to show you that I do have a Harvest Gold linden on the lot, and I wanted to get you a look at its bark because it has a very attractive bark also. This exfoliating bark is on our Harvest Gold linden, and it's a fascinating looking exfoliating bark, kind of fun. This tree, this Harvest Gold, is planted right on our first row of our tree area. There behind me you see our tree gate, and in front of me the path that gets you back to our the rest of our complex. So that Harvest Gold linden is right here on the first row of our tree area. Beautiful, beautiful trees lindens are. They're just a wonderful tree for the region. Again, not ideally super drought tolerant, but they are a beautiful tree, roughly 50 feet high, 30 feet across, and just a beautiful, beautiful tree. So that's the tree options that I wanted to share with you. Going to get to the shrub options here now, and back over to the cart where I've got all those. And again, I'm going to show you this compact cranberry that I was doing a little bit of looking at that leaf scorch that I was showing you earlier on. But compact viburnum are one of my favorite shrubs. They have a tough leathery leaf. They are super cold hardy. Cold hardy zone 2. I mean, just knockout cold hardy. And what I love about the Alfredo and the Bailey compact is that they are a tight, compact plant. They have a maximum height of 5 to 6 feet. And it's going to probably take them at least 10 years, if not 15 years, to get there. So they're a great foundation plant because they're not going to overpower the space. They do have a white flower in the spring of the year, around May, kind of the same time as the lilac are blooming, roughly thereabouts. And that flower is a cluster, and it does mature to this rich fruit that you see on the tag. The fruit is edible, although it's very bitter. I don't know that I do anything with it for human consumption, but it does feed the birds. And lastly, these viburnum have just a rich kind of red fall color that's all over this plant in the fall of the year. So the viburnum is one of my favorite shrubs. Cold hardy zone 2, just a tough plant, nice and compact, tight habit. The Alfredo and the Bailey compact, great plant for that, and beautiful red fall color. Often I recommend that plant, this viburnum, as a substitute for those of you who might want to plant a burning bush, because burning bush sometimes are not super drought tolerant in our region. Sometimes they handle the cold fairly well. They tend to be a little bit smaller than they would be naturally in some spaces, but they will kind of tolerate the cold, but they won't tolerate the drought. So the Viburnum is a great substitute for that. The next one I want to show you is, of course, in its prime right now. This is the Panicle Hydrangea, Hydrangea paniculata. And some of you, if you've been gardeners for a while, you might be familiar with the PG Hydrangea. The PG Hydrangea, again, a big shrub, gets big like the common lilac, 8-10 feet, and has these beautiful cone-shaped blooms on them. The Panicle Hydrangea, all of them have this cone-shaped bloom. But they've worked very hard on the Panicle Hydrangea in recent years, and they have come up with, just like the Viburnum, some very compact, tight plants. And when they did that, it's affected the flower a little bit. It's become maybe a little rounder than the PG Hydrangea, maybe not quite as tall and panicle looking, hence the Latin name, Hydrangea paniculata. But the Panicle Hydrangeas are tough plants for the region. They're cold hardy too, zone 3, and they are flowering right now. You'll see many of them are getting at it and going at it. If yours isn't yet, it probably will be soon. But they will flower for most of the month of July into the first part of August. And what's interesting about these blooms is that they form the bloom, and they form the body of the bloom, and then they open from the bottom up. So here you see that the petals on the bottom of this bloom here, where my finger is, are opening already, and up top we're not open yet. And these blooms kind of open from the bottom to the top, and as they do that, the color changes. Right now they're kind of a limey, this little lime is kind of a limey green. Eventually the entire flower will be white. It'll just be a bright, rich, creamy white. And then after that, as the bloom starts to age further, it will age, and these petals that are lower will start to be kind of a dusty pink. There are some cultivars of this hydrangea, that they've bred to be a little bit slower, such as the vanilla strawberry or the strawberry sundae, where they tend to do that process a little slower, and you end up with this multicolored bloom on the same plant. Very attractive. But hydrangea are good. There are some dwarf cultivars, again, the little lime, the little quick, the bobo, that are great cultivars for a foundation planting because they're 5 feet or lower. The bobo, I think, only gets 2 feet. So they're great for foundation planting, or an area that you don't want something that's too big if you live in town. Maybe you don't want a big shrub in your yard. They're a great option for full sun. They do like their water, though. They're not the most drought tolerant plant that you would choose. Next one, the same thing goes for barberry. Oh, same thing goes for barberry. Here's a limoncello barberry. Beautiful yellow foliage to it. A little bit green in the shade, but bright yellow in the sun, in the full sun environment. Not super drought tolerant. Pretty drought tolerant, but not super drought tolerant. Didn't handle our cold quite as well as some things did from this past winter. But again, you see 3 to 4 feet by 3 to 4 feet. Hardy zone 4, roughly maybe a little bit in zone 3, but bright color on that barberry. There's some red leaf barberry too that I have in the lot that are great color options, foliage options. Not much, if any, of a flower on barberry. It's a tiny little yellow thing that you would see right as they leaf out in the spring of the year. It would mature to a kind of a red berry that can be spread by the birds. The berry's very small. I bet probably 5 or 6 of them would fit on my fingernail. It's really small berry, so it's not something you're going to do anything with. But once in a while, the birds will move it around, which in some states they're deeming it noxious for that reason. But that's the shrub options that I have for you. We're going to move on to a couple 3 perennial options here, and then I'm going to tell you of the last of my fun things to share, and then we're going to be done. This beautiful, someone's out enjoying a ride this evening, this beautiful gold stem rudbeckia, black-eyed Susan perennial. Looks daisy-like. Really getting after it this time of year. The early part of August or late July is when these things really start to be happy and start to put on some flowers. They're doing really well, and they're going to be great additions to the landscape for the next month or month and a half. This is their pretty time. So the gold stem black-eyed Susan, I do have these in stock. the one behind it, another common favorite. This is the autumn joy sedum. Here's a picture of the tag. You see that flower developing now. It's not open yet. It should probably be open maybe close to the 1st of August, maybe a week or so after that. But beautiful pink kind of a bloom color. Foliage is very tough and leathery. Great drought tolerant plants. Sedum are all drought tolerant plants. They're tough, succulent in nature, very tough plants. So they're a great option for the late season additions, blooming additions to your perennial landscape. The last one I want to share with you, it's finally blooming. I usually talk about this perennial grass when I have folks come looking for perennial grasses, and they're always looking for that Carl Forrester, the one that looks like wheat. And I love that plant. It's great, but it's overplanted. There are lots of other fun options too, and this is the one that I often mention. Doesn't get as tall as Carl though, and so that's a deal breaker for a lot of folks. But this prairie drop seed grass. It's a short, kind of a mounded grass. It doesn't get super tall. The leaf foliage only gets maybe a foot, maybe a foot and a half, but I would say closer to a foot. But what it does have that's really attractive are these wispy little seed heads that it puts up in late summer. I'm going to get a little closer, let you have a look at those. Because what's fascinating about them is they have kind of a nutty, sedgy, musty scent to them. I think it smells good. I can't wait sometimes to get to this time of year so I can have a chance to smell the prairie drop seed again. Some people think it stinks. In fact, my wife is one of those. She thinks it stinks. We got out of, there it is. We got out of a car at a hotel a couple of years ago, several years ago, shortly after we were married. We were going to another family wedding. And we got out, and that was basically her observation, was, what stinks? I said, it's that grass. I think it smells good. I think it stinks, she said. So there's a little aside. But prairie drop seed does add a little bit of aroma, some aroma scent to the garden. Does add some texture, some fun, attractive nature. The foliage turns kind of an orange in the fall. So it's a great plant for the landscape too. So that's some tree, shrub, and perennial options that we have in stock now. Again, it is a little bit of a hot time to plant. If you are planning on taking a vacation or being gone at all the rest of this month or the first part of August, don't plant right now. Just don't. It's just not a good time. If you're going to be around and you're going to be able to see that plant gets water every day, you can, if you want to. Go ahead and plant. You just have to have it looking nice. You got something that's going to be going on. You just got to freshen things up. Go ahead, that's fine. Just be sure that you're able to give adequate attention to the plant during this time of the year, because it is, as we've mentioned, the hot time of the year. So do make sure that you're giving your plant the adequate moisture that's required. Best time to plant, though, again, as I mentioned in the earlier part of the video, best time to plant is the fall. And for us in our region, western North Dakota, northeast Montana, that window, that 30-day window, is roughly the 15th of August to the 15th of September. That's the best time to do any outdoor planting. It's the best time to sow any new lawn, to do anything that's a perennial or year after year process. So you're most welcome. We're always glad to help. So thank you for tuning in. The last thing I do want to share with you, and I want to make sure that you have a chance to get your feedback in on, is we have put out a survey on our fall classes. Yes, our classes are starting again. That means the school year, it has to come around this time of year pretty soon, the middle of August. And it also means that we'll be starting up our workshops again. So that's something that's to be looking forward to. But we do want your input on those fall workshop topics. So visit our website, handyandysnursery.com. Should be in the description of the video when I get done. And give us your feedback on that SurveyMonkey survey. Take the survey button and give us your feedback, times that you're able to come. Give us your feedback on the topics we're thinking about. And we really look forward to seeing you for some fun fall options. We have a fall outdoor pot planned. We have some other fun workshop options coming up here this fall. So we, again, as many are not familiar, but we do not close for the year. We're open all year long. So we're really getting excited for the fall and winter Christmas seasons again, and the fun opportunities that involve workshop and gardening in our main building with you. So with that, please take our survey. Leave any questions that you might have after the fact in the comments. Send me a private message. With that, I'll say good luck and happy growing.